good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to At America, the U.S. Embassy's American Center. First and foremost, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Genara Jusuf, or you can call me Ara, and I will be the MC for today's event. For those of you new here, At America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center, and our mission here is to provide a space for people to learn more about the United States through our programs, events, and also our facilities. May is the month where we celebrate Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, a month that commemorates the resilience, legacy, traditions, and culture of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders across the United States. And today, here at America, we welcome everyone to celebrate this Heritage Month with us on our event today titled My Journey, Diverse Diplomatic Voices. We are already joined today here by our very wonderful speakers that will be sharing to us their unique stories and also journeys. But before we start, let's spice things up with a little social media quiz. And the question for today is, when was the Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month established? Is it A, June 1980, B, August 1975, C, June 1977, or D, January 1977? You can submit your answer on our social media platforms, and for the quickest one who can answer it correctly will receive a live shout-out from us by the end of this event. And now, before we start the event, let us hear an opening remarks from the Consular Associate of the U.S. Embassy, Jakarta. Please welcome Lisa Ton.
Selamat siang semuanya. Saya senang sangat berada di sini hari ini. Selamat datang di At America. Just before I start, I want to do a shout out to my friends over here, Spicy and Asa O'Toole. Thank you. My name is Lisa. And today welcome everyone. I'm really pleased to see everybody here today. In the United States, in May, we observe Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander. It's an opportunity for us to reflect on and celebrate the AANHPI community. I'm an American of Vietnamese ancestry who's really proud to honor our diversity and our collective contributions. The U.S. Embassy has diplomats of over 10 Asian ancestries, and we're really proud about that. And we're pleased to pull together today a panel of American diplomats who will share their stories and their experiences growing up in the AAPI community. Shall we meet our moderator and our panelists? But before we do that, I'm hoping that the conversations today will spark your curiosity about Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders. And perhaps it might even pique your interest in thinking about your own identity and the diverse communities for which you are a part of. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa, for your very insightful opening remarks. And now we'll be moving on to our discussion. And to lead and also navigate our discussion, we're already joined today by our very wonderful moderator. She is the Economic Chief of U.S. Mission to ASEAN. Please welcome Thao Tran.
Good afternoon. How are you? So welcome to our program to celebrate the ASEAN American, Native, Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders Heritage Month, AANHPI for short, so you guys don't have to hear me repeat it 10 more times. We're very excited to have you join us here in person at America in Jakarta. But as I was told, we're also joined by colleagues virtually at American corners throughout Indonesia. But a special shout out to the American corner at Untan Pontianak, who's organizing a live party to watch us today. So thank you and welcome. I also want to welcome anyone who's joining us virtually through the social media platforms of Consulates Medan in Surabaya. And now, for a very special treat for all of our audience here today, I will be joined by colleagues who are extremely distinguished, and you will see why when I introduce them. So for my panelists, as I introduce you, please come on stage one by one. Our first panelist for today will be Bryce Yamamoto, who is the Bilateral Affairs Officer from the Office of Defense Cooperation at the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta. He was raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I should be calling him Major Yamamoto. In the summer of 2018, he volunteered for the state of Hawaii lava disaster on the Big Island of Hawaii as the lead medical officer. So welcome, Major Yamamoto. Next up, we have another colleague of mine, Gloria Lee, who is a public diplomacy officer. She is currently part of the team that manages the social media accounts for the State Department, including the Secretary of State. Previously, she served in Kyiv, Ukraine, and Guangzhou, China. Next up, we have Jasmine Tillu. She is the Environment Officer at USAID. She has over 18 years of experience as an urban planner and environmental specialist. She has also lived and worked for 9 years in China and 2 years in South America, and a very impressive list of foreign languages, including Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, and she's working on Bahasa Indonesia right now. And last but certainly not least, my colleague, Joshua Shen, who's joining virtually from Surabaya. He's currently the public affairs officer there, working to increase educational cultural exchanges to the United States. And like many of us on stage today, he has worked exclusively in the Indo-Pacific region, including Malaysia, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives. So welcome, Joshua, virtually. And now I would like to start the program so that we get to know our panelists. Like Lisa earlier, I'm an American, a proud American of Vietnamese descent. But other than Major Yamamoto, I don't know where my other colleagues here on stage are originally from. So I think to start off with, let me ask them to tell us about their background, where in the United States that you all grew up, what are some of your favorite memories celebrating your culture? And before I start, as moderator, I just want to take this privilege to let you guys know, even though they're typically, when you hear where Asian Americans are from, when you ask them overseas, they typically name Texas, California. I'm actually from the District of Columbia, not just the Washington, D.C. area, but from the nation's capital. So that may be an interesting fact among colleagues up here. But we'll see. Let's hear from Major Yamamoto first.
Thank you for the introduction. As mentioned earlier, aloha. Selamat siang. Thank you for being here today. So I am from Hawaii, born and raised. I am Asian American. I'm also native Hawaiian. So very blessed for this opportunity.
My parents are from South Korea, and they immigrated to the United States in the 80s. And I grew up in Virginia, the northern part, which is not that far from Thao, where she grew up. And yeah.
Selamat siang semuanya. So I just want to start off by thanking my colleagues and also to say that I'm really excited to be here today to speak with all of you that are here live, but also those online who can be forgotten. So just a quick hello and thank you. My name is Jasmine Tillu, and I was born in the US. Decades ago, my parents emigrated from Hong Kong to the US for work. And I was born in the state of Virginia in Alexandria, a place called Alexandria. And my parents both grew up in Hong Kong. However, my dad is originally half Chinese and half Pakistani. So that basically makes me 3/4 Hong Kong Chinese descent and 1/4 Pakistani descent. And I'll just lastly mention that I grew up in New York, mostly when I was in the US, but because of my father's work, I actually also grew up as a child in different places in Asia. So I was an Asian American in the United States, but also an Asian American in Asia. And I'll leave it at that. Pass it on to Josh. Thank you.
Hi. It's awkward seeing me such in large size on the screen, and I guess it maybe indicates that I have a big head and big ego. But I'll try to stay modest here, but I can't be modest about California, where I was raised. I was actually born in Taiwan. My parents are originally from China. I was born in Taiwan, and I immigrated to the United States when I was very young. Reason why I love saying I'm from California is early on, even before I joined the State Department, I was an intern at U.S. Embassy Bangkok. And when I did my very first public outreach event, something like this. And for us Asian Americans and AANHPI folks, sorry about the lighting. The question of, am I really an American diplomat? I quickly learned to find a way to explain things to audiences. And that is to say, my parents are from Taiwan, and I was raised in California. Or I say I'm from California. And that's always a good way to let people know, yeah, they know about America. They also know about California, and they also just understand that we have such a diverse state, maybe the most diverse state in the United States. So thank you very much.
Thank you to all my panelists. As you can see, I think we just dispelled literally one of the most common misperceptions about the AANHPI community in the U.S. Because I think typically we hear that we're a monolithic community, that somehow, we're all of the same ethnicities, but that's certainly not the case, because as you can see, we have Vietnamese, Taiwanese, Korean, and Jasmine representing a lot of ethnicities. So that's the first misperception that I want to correct today, and hopefully you'll remember that we're a very diverse community, and that's actually part of the reason that makes the United States the strong country that it is. But before I turn over and ask additional questions, I did want to give Major Yamamoto an opportunity to share your photos with us.
Okay, sure. So we can cue to the photos now.
And perhaps as they're doing that, you can share with us some of your favorite memories living on the island.
So growing up in Hawaii, we're very fortunate. It's an Asian-based culture. A lot of the Asian immigrants that came to Hawaii came over to work the plantations. So there are a lot of sugarcane and pineapple plantations back in the late 1700s up until mid 1900s, really. And so a lot of families came over to the US or over to Hawaii for some opportunities. So I am of Japanese descent, Chinese descent, and Hawaiian descent. So my dad is Japanese. He was actually born in Washington State. His family was there for a few, like two generations prior to he being born and being raised there, but the war broke out. So if we can cue to some of the photos, I actually have some photos in there from when my dad was younger. But this is my family. So this is my wife. She's also Asian American. She's half Caucasian and half Chinese. Her dad's actually from Hong Kong, and her mom's from California. And those are our two lovely children. Next slide. Some pictures. Those are my parents. So my dad is of Japanese descent. My mom is Chinese Hawaiian. Yeah, Bali, of course, right? We loved it. Next, we can go to the next pictures. Those are my in-laws with my two children there and my parents again. So this is a few years ago. Well, actually, the other picture is from the airport before we moved to Jakarta. So that was just last year. And we can go to the next slides. So this is my mom's parents. So in Chinese, right, my popo and my gungung, my grandmother and my grandfather. And those are his parents. So his dad was of Hawaiian Chinese descent. And that is one of the few pictures we have left of his face. So when they were growing up in the late 1800s, early 1900s, being of Hawaiian ancestry was frowned upon. So a lot of the pictures, his head was cut out. So his wife actually cut his picture out of like from the pictures, so we don't have him anymore. But we were able to find one of the rare pictures of my great-great-grandfather. And on the right, or to your right here, those are my great-great-grandparents from my grandmother. So that's her parents. They were all born in Hawaii. Their parents immigrated. So, you know, they actually have a pretty long generational history in Hawaii. Next slide. So this is my dad when he was younger. That's his parents. That's my granddad and my Grammy. But this picture with the bus in the back, that's actually from the internment camp. So during World War II, because they're of Japanese ancestry, and you know the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, right? The United States decided to relocate Japanese families of Japanese ancestry, you know, away from the coastlines into internment camps where they could be monitored, housed, fed. So growing up, I didn't have too many difficulties as far as, you know, discrimination or issues, but I really give it to my grandparents going through these challenges. But my dad was young, so he doesn't remember much. He had fun because had all the boys playing. So they were playing baseball all the time and hanging out. But yeah, I give it to my grandparents. That bottom left picture, the gentleman with the glasses in the back. So that's my granddad. And then that's his siblings. His mom is in the middle, in between his two sisters. But they were there all in internment camp. My uncle Mitz, the young boy on the far left, he actually joined the Army and was part of that 442nd Troop that got recognized as one of the most decorated units in the history of military battles and the fights that they did. And above that are his parents. So they were farmers in Washington State, and there was actually my dad's relatives, they actually all combined and owned a farm in Washington. So, but after the war, you know, they didn't have a house to return to or a car. My grandmother is actually from Hawaii, so when they got out, they relocated to Hawaii, and that's where they started a new life. My dad was, basically grew up in Hawaii because they moved there when he was like 5 or 6 years old. So that's their history. You can go to the next slide. So this is my mom's side of the family. These are all of my first cousins. So we're all different. We're all mixed. There's 10 of us first cousins. My mom had 3 siblings, so there are four of them all together. But we're lined up by age. So my cousin to the right, he's the oldest cousin, and then actually his younger sister to the left is the youngest. my sister is in front of me, and so we're all of Chinese and Hawaiian descent, but like obviously my other cousins were Japanese, Samoan. So my cousin Malcolm, his dad was from Samoa. And then my other cousins in the middle, they're kind of like my wife. They had a Caucasian mother, and their dad was Chinese Hawaiian. And these are my parents here with my Uncle Walt in that picture. But yeah, this is the last time we were all together. It was a few years ago. We can go to the next slide, or
Sure.
am I going to?
If you are done sharing, you can keep going if you need.
Yeah. No. So this family is my cousin, on my dad's side, and my sister and her children. So yeah, we're all mixed.
Yeah.
We're all mixed.
So thank you, Major Yamamoto, for sharing the history of your family. I mean, I think what's interesting from hearing your story is that, as AANHPI community, we have different waves of immigration to the United States, and your family is certainly part of the very, very first wave. And then we have families like Joshua's family, where he himself is like a recent immigrant. But like growing up, Gloria, I don't know about you, but since we grew up in a similar area, we celebrated like Tet Vietnamese New Year every year in the community. So was that something that you also celebrated within the Korean community, or what would you say are some of your favorite memories?
Let's see. I think I had the opportunity to see a changing demographic for where I grew up. When I was very, very young, there wasn't a lot of other Asian Americans who looked like me. But as I was growing older, the area became more diverse. Lots of families came in from all over the world, and I got to have friends with people from all over, and it was such a great opportunity. I'm very thankful. So when I was younger, I think the focus was kind of like fitting in as much as we could. But as I got older and there were more families that were from different ancestries and ethnicities, a lot of those unique family cultural things were celebrated. So as I got older, I got to publicly celebrate, Seollal, which is the Korean Lunar New Year. I got to not feel uncomfortable for all the Korean food that I loved that I could take to school with me. So I would say that those are the things that I'm very, very thankful for where I grew up.
Jasmine, how about you?
Sure. I guess stemming off of what Gloria just said on challenges, maybe instead of focusing on the Asian American experience in America, I'll just say one thing about being Asian American in Asia. I think a situation that often happens is that people are confused and they really are very curious to know where you're from, right? And I think the situation that happens is that people usually think you're from the neighboring country. So for example, if I'm traveling in Vietnam, they think I'm from Thailand. Or if I'm in Thailand, they think I'm from Singapore. Or they think, like for example here, orang Indonesia kan? They think I'm from Indonesia, yeah? Or like dari Sulawesi, dari Sumatra. And then I think, I guess you could say a challenge is figuring out how to explain your identity or who you are in a simple way for people to grasp. I think Josh sort of touched on that a little bit, right? But there's also positives because I think by looking the way I do, I can blend in if I'm walking around crowds in Indonesia. And also, I don't have to get always the bule price, right? Bisa ngawar di pasar, I think. So,
Josh, do you have any similar anecdotes like that to share? And how did you overcome some of what you would describe as challenges?
I think all of us, first of all, Major Yamamoto, love the pictures and slides,
really.
and it really contextualized for everyone the diversity of the Asian American and HPI community. What I will say is the most important thing I would tell to anybody, but especially Asian Americans and my kids, for example, is understand and be proud of who you are, whether it is from a mixed background or just one boring Chinese background, like I get the impression. Be proud of who you are and understand your culture. Don't shy away from it. You don't have to try to be something else in order to get, find what you think would be the successful pathway for you. And I think with most of my childhood growing up in California, even though there were areas with lots of Asian Americans, there was still, taunts and bullying and, fights that I would get into. And I don't shy away from that. I think those help make you stronger. And they still exist to some extent. I think it's gotten much better now. But, in the 80s, in the 1980s in the United States, it was a very different time. And so I would say the challenges that come to our community and to any community that is feeling isolated is something that can be of a strength, or it can be something that weakens you. And I think we see right now Asian Americans across the United States come together, band together, find their identity, not just within their own small neighborhood or their own ethnic community, but across multiple Asian American and NHPI communities. And so I really find strength in that. I think the challenge makes it somewhat more rewarding, and to find out who I am.
Thanks so much. Super inspiring what you just shared, and certainly something, your advice is certainly something that I think the audience can use in any difficult situation, not necessarily just about confronting challenges with regards to identity. I will say, and this is a good segue into the next question, but I think one of the most common challenges that I think we all probably have experienced before, and Jasmine alluded to it earlier, but as diplomats stationed here overseas, I think we often run into people who, sometimes just unintentionally, but we're often asked, so where are you from? And then obviously we would all say the United States or America or some version of that. And then the response would automatically be, but no, where are you really from? So I think, that is something that we often have to confront with. And certainly the way that we do it is, through our work and through events like this, to clarify, we may not look like the stereotypical American that you may see in pop culture, 6 foot tall, blue eyes, blonde hair. But we are certainly very much a part of the American fabric and contributing in many different ways, including entering into public service. Because we're all here overseas representing the United States and serving our country. So my next question for our panelists is actually, what motivated you to pursue a career in public service, and how has your background helped or hindered your work either here or when you're back in the United States? So Major Yamamoto, why don't you tackle that first?
Thank you. My duty to calling didn't really come till later. I joined the military very late. So I'm actually an emergency room nurse by my job skill. I worked at a hospital in Hawaii, one of the trauma centers. And this is a typical story from Hawaii. I'm at the beach. I run into one of my friends I haven't seen in 15 years. And then we're talking. We call it talking story. So we're talking story, and he's like, "Hey, what do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm a nurse." He's like, "I'm a nurse too." And then we're chatting, and he's like, "You ever thought of joining the Hawaii Air National Guard?" No, I never thought of joining the military. So the Hawaii has a Air National Guard, which is a military element, kind of like the reserves. So you get to live at home, stay in Hawaii, but also provide your public service. So I went to a couple of their engagements. They did some really cool stuff. So I decided to sign up. I've been in the Guard now for coming up to 10 years. I've never thought I would be here. If you asked me 5 years ago, would you be in Indonesia, living in Indonesia with your family? No, like never crossed my mind, never thought of it. Started doing some engagements through the National Guard, coming to Indonesia, and that's how the spark started. We love it here. Thank you for being the culture that you are. Yeah. My family and I really appreciate it. Yeah, we're trying to stay as long as we can, I think. but yes, thank you.
I think the sentiments are mutual. I would say, personally, I have found the people in Indonesia to be among the friendliest that I've met, and certainly I've worked in, quite a few countries. So Gloria, Jasmine, and Josh, I don't know if you guys have to deal with this within your own family, but I think for AANHPI families, one of the things that we often have to confront with our parents when we try to choose a career is obviously they would very much prefer that we're either lawyers or doctors. There is no third option for a career path. And so, I myself certainly face that. When I try to go to grad school, my parents were very disappointed that I wasn't going to law school or med school. And mind you, the fact that I did go to Harvard University for grad school did not, that did not help minimize their concerns. So I wonder, Gloria, Jasmine, and Josh, if you all had similar experiences with your parents, as you try to pursue a career in public service, where our parents are probably really hoping that we would pursue careers that would allow us to have economic security, which they associate with, medicine and law, and certainly not public service. And in fact, in my own case, my parents, one of their concerns as refugees from Vietnam is for their kids to be involved politically, which they view, the State Department and the Foreign Service is a career about that. So would love to hear your own experiences and how you navigated maybe some of those challenges.
Yes, I think that the ideal career would have been doctor, lawyer, maybe a rich business person, But I think public service is something I've always been interested in. By training, I'm actually a teacher. So that's, none of those things. Not a doctor, not a lawyer, not something that makes a lot of money. But when I was in my 20s, I traveled I lived abroad with the Peace Corps. Some of you might know what the Peace Corps is, because there are Peace Corps volunteers in Indonesia. But it's when a country invites American volunteers to live and work with the people. And so I did that, and I was so excited. I studied as much as I could about the country, and I showed up so excited. And the people there thought, "Who are you? We're waiting for an American volunteer." And it just was a huge shock to me. I was like, "I'm an American. What do you mean you're waiting for an American volunteer? That's me." And it over 2 years, I had so many conversations about what an American is, what the United States is, how me, looking like this and not that person, the actor on TV, that I'm still an American. And having that conversation really made me realize that I value that so much, that I want people to understand what my country is, that Americans look like me. They can look like so many different kinds of people, and our culture is rich and diverse, and that's probably one of our biggest strengths. So that kind of led me eventually to come back home and then end up at the State Department, where I get to do that professionally all the time. I would say that my parents are happy that I can say, they have a diplomat daughter. They don't like that I live so far away all the time. That is not their preference. But I am so happy to be able to do something I'm passionate about, which is represent my country and show people that Americans do look like me.
Jasmine?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Tawan. I think I did get pressure from my parents, and I'm sure many of you as well, right, to be a certain thing or study a certain major. But I think I just focused on my passion on cities and the environment. So I'm an environment officer at USAID, which is the Lembaga Pembangunan Internasional Amerika Serikat. So we are the development arm, the aid arm of the U.S. government. And I guess the way that I saw it was I'm just going to focus on what I like to do. And I feel that if we improve the environment, it's helping the country that we're in. So right now, Indonesia, but also it's good for the United States and it's actually good for the world. So I found working as a diplomat in this capacity to be good for the world and motivating, and again, good for all parties involved. And I thought it was a motivating platform. So that's sort of how I got into it.
Josh, how about you?
So I have a positive and a critical reason why I don't know if positive is the right word, why I decided to join this job. First, I wanted to do public service because I was thankful for the United States. And the reason I say that is my dad passed away. So a little bit, I'm a first-generation immigrant, but my father was also a first-generation immigrant. And he came before 1965, where there were barriers on Asian Americans. He came through a loophole where his father was a minister. So at that time, the United States were only allowing a small group of people to come from Asia to come to the United States to move there. So he came in early. He became an American citizen, and he met my mom in the United States, went back to Taiwan, gave birth to me, and I moved back to the United States after that. So one of the things that I was thankful of was my father passed away when I was 1.5 years old. And when I was 18, I got this letter from the Social Security, that's the United States government office to support people who are in need, saying that I've accumulated over $100,000 in payments because to help my mother because my father died so young. My mom, I asked my mom, I was like, great, now I have $100,000. Where's my money? And my mom said, I spent it all supporting you guys. And that was a wake-up call, not just about how my mother overcame challenges, but about how the United States government really helped take care of me and my brother until we were 18. So from I was 1 until I was 18. So I was always thankful for that and mindful of that this was my country, because this was a country that had supported my family in needs. On the other hand, an important reason I joined was because I was very critical of U.S. foreign policy and a number of things. And I was protesting wars in the 90s and in the early 2000s, and very, very critical. And so I wanted to see if I could make changes from the inside. And I still think it's important when you have disagreements personally, because you think that the United States is hurting itself on national interest, to voice your objections. And as an Asian American, as a Chinese American, that can be seen as, especially amongst ourselves, as we shouldn't speak up too much about an issue. We'll be seen as not American enough, even by our colleagues. I disagree with that, and it's taken me a long way to get to that point. I think it's important, if we have disagreements, to let the people who are senior, whether they're elected or they're just senior officials in the State Department or other agencies, in any way possible to let them know why policies are a mistake and hurt the United States. And so both because I'm thankful, and also because I want to make changes to where I think we're going in the wrong direction. think that's why I joined public service.
Well, thanks for sharing your story. I think what the part that you mentioned, part of the reason that why you wanted to join the State Department is because you were critical of certain things. I just want to let our audience know, actually that's not just one of the strengths of the Foreign Service, but it's also one of the strengths and I would say hallmark of the U.S. American democracy. There are lots of things we might not agree with our government on policy, but there's always room for a debate. There's always room for a discussion, and people always, there's a venue for us to be heard, and I think that's extremely powerful and something that we all value as a democracy. So I have mentioned this throughout our chat today, but of the various stereotypes that we often have to face as a member of the AANHPI community. But before we transition to the Q&A programming, I just wanted to do a round robin of each of us naming one stereotype that you think others have of our community that you would like to dispel for our audience today. So who wants to go? I'll start with you, Josh, because I always have you go last. So why don't you go first this round?
Well, I guess it is that we are meek and we are submissive. And I identify a lot with the people I work with here in Asia, who are not Asian Americans, whether it's in Vietnam or Malaysia or in China or Taiwan or here in Indonesia. I think that stereotype requires our action and our voices in centering our voices, like the event here today, to help break. And I appreciate that we have more and more space to do that. So speaking up, being that one person in the room who has another opinion and not being afraid to say something, standing up for what you believe in.
Thank you. To add to what you just mentioned, I would also note, that is usually quoted in literature and studies as one of the reasons that AANHPI individuals are unable to rise, through the ranks, whether in whatever career fields that they pursue, and it's typically described as the bamboo ceiling. It's a stereotype because certainly we have people who just because they're soft-spoken does not mean they don't have the leadership qualities to rise through the ranks of whatever career path they choose. And so, look at us today, maybe Josh is soft-spoken, but I'm sure through his views that he shared today, he certainly is not a person without opinions. So how about you, Jasmine?
Yeah, I actually want to, I think give a message just to say that, I hope through this and through other events and different, media outlets and other talks that you attend, you can see that Americans have multiple identities. And even within the Asian American community, there's a myriad of identities. Just today with all our speakers, you can see that, right? And I think I want to point to an example from Indonesia where you can be half Javanese or half Batak, or half Bugis and part Chinese and Sundanese, right? And when I was learning Bahasa Indonesia, there's Pak and there's Ibu, and then I learned Mas. And then it blew me away that not everybody's a Mas. There's Mas, there's Bli, there's Kang, there's Ito, and I just thought, oh my goodness, there's so many different ethnicities here, so many different sukus. So I think the message I want to convey is that all the combinations you have here in Indonesia, right? And then you have the layer of being Indonesian, right? That's your nationality. All of those combinations, in the United States, we have similarly a ton of combinations. And so when you think about the United States and identities, hopefully you can, make that parallel with your own identity.
Gloria?
Your question reminds me of something that happened when I was working in one of my DC offices. I had a meeting with a foreign group, a foreign delegation that was coming in. So I walked into the room, stuck my hand out, and they said, "We're waiting for an American official. Can you get us coffee?" So I thought, what do I do? What do you think I did? I got them coffee. So I got them coffee. Once the last person got their coffee, I sat down at the head of the table, and they were shocked.
I hope they apologize.
I played it off as kind of like isn't this funny? And it our meeting opened with a conversation about stereotypes, about what an American is. And I think the stereotype that to address your question, that I'd like to address, is that appearances is not necessarily the sum of someone's experiences, their background, and where they come from, or their potential even. So I think the stereotype that I would like to address is that when you meet someone, they come with a wealth of experience, background, family, and those things make them a unique person worth getting to know. And no matter what they look like, I think it's definitely something that we should pursue and connect with another person.
No pressure, Major Yamamoto, but you're next.
For stereotypes, just going back to Hawaii, of all the different nationalities, everybody teases each other. You grow up, as a Hawaiian, you're called lazy, you're called dumb sometimes. Chinese, you're considered cheap, you don't want to spend money, things like that. But going back to all of the speakers here, take pride. Take pride. I see it here. You guys, not you guys, but the Indonesians are so proud of your culture. When I meet with the military and I meet with doctors, I meet with these agencies, never judge a book by its cover. Never. You're amazing. Keep that pride going. That will keep your nation strong. Fight for that.
That is some great advice, not just for all audience, but all of us. I would also say, with regards to all of these stereotypes, I personally, and I believe the rest of our panelists would agree, yes, there are stereotypes, and we would prefer that we didn't have to deal with them. But I think, as Gloria mentioned, they also present an opportunities for us to have a conversation with whomever may be presenting the stereotype, and that is actually quite powerful, especially when we're overseas in our careers when we serve as diplomats. We can have a conversation about ethnicity, diversity, and why that is so important. So before we open up, because I know we have questions, but before we open up to the Q&A, one of the main messages that I would like to leave you with today is that, number one, again, the AANHPI communities is extremely diverse. We're not monolithic. And so what that means is, please keep that in mind as you interact with us. And number two, despite some of the challenges that we might face, being viewed as the other, whether it be in the United States or here overseas, we've made tremendous contributions to the United States as well as to the environment in which we grew up in or in which we have served and lived. So I just want to leave you all with that. And hopefully after today, please, if you have further questions about any of the issues, topics that we discussed today, please engage with our embassy or amongst yourselves with your friends, because I think May, AANHPI month, presents that kind of opportunity. But you don't have to wait until May to do it. You can do it every day. So with that, I see that we have questions already submitted online, but I do want to give the American corner at Utan Pontianak the opportunity to pose the first question before I turn it over to our live audience as well as online questions. So do we have a question from the American corner? Please don't be shy or I will call on you.
From American corner, we have one who wants to ask. This one.
Yay!
Hello,
Hello.
you guys hear my voice?
Yes.
So my name is Lazu Fadlin Muslim. I'm from Untan. I'm majoring at information system. So I have a question about, do you have, what is it? Do you have like burdens to promoting your own culture to like Americans or to your like co-workers or your bosses, something like to promoting your culture? And how do you promote your culture in America? Like the effective way to promote culture in America, because I think they have their own culture. So how to make how to make the American pay attention to your culture, and then after that they want to learn more about your culture. That's all my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. That was very brave of you to be the first one to ask us a question. I'll take a stab at it and then I'll turn over to the panelists. You know, each culture within the AANHPI community has its own traditions and, you know, different festivals that we celebrate. And in the United States, you know, the cultures were very much active. So I think the entire community, regardless of which culture you're from, you would celebrate things like I mentioned, you know, in my case, being a Vietnamese American, growing up, you know, my parents still observe the traditions, and we still very much value the opportunity to do all the things that you would do during New Year by, you know, handing out red envelopes with money in it, which I think is like typical in some of the other cultures that celebrate Lunar New Year. So it's very visible, the celebration. But also, I think, you know, even in school when we have friends, obviously they would be interested to know about our family's history. Why did we immigrate to the U.S.? And the reasons are numerous depending on your own family's history. So that's another opportunity to speak about your culture. But I'll turn it over to the rest of the panelists to see if they have additional experiences to add. Major Yamamoto?
Sharing your culture, you know, to your leadership, to your colleagues, to your friends. For Hawaii, a lot of it is about food. Sharing your food, having that meal together automatically creates a bond, I think. And using those opportunities, right? Using those chances to actually, you know, start that conversation. I think it's a great starter.
I would say music as well. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. Gloria?
I would agree definitely with the food. I love eating, and I love sharing Korean food with, you know, others. I will say that lately, because K-pop is so, you know, well known, it's been really easy to have those conversations about, you know, Korean culture, Korean music, etc., Korean dramas. You know, I'm sure some of you might watch them. But in terms of, you know, with my colleagues and friends, I think including them in my celebrations has been a really big thing for us. My husband's here. He is Chinese American, and so when we do Lunar New Year, we have a combination of, you know, Chinese traditions and Korean traditions, and then we invite our friends to come in and enjoy it. And I think those kind of opportunities and those kind of the ability to share parts of me, I think is a great opportunity and something that I love doing.
Jasmine?
Yeah, I guess I definitely agree with the food aspect. I'm just trying to think of if there's any thing else to add. I think, I'll just say that I think in recent years, there's been more of a move towards celebrating diversity, right? And so people are actually curious. And so when you have that curiosity, it kind of lends itself, it's helpful for you to then share about your food or, habits or customs that you like to do. And people actually often are interested to hear.
Josh?
So I'll just touch back on music, and I'd like to share parts of not just Chinese American or themes from Taiwan, but all Asia that I still feel very interested in. So I love sharing aspects of current culture because it's not just, oh, hey, here's a tea ceremony or here's like this ancient piece of art. I like to tell one of the great things about being Asian American is that, especially if you embrace it, is that, Asia is so vibrant. And all across Asia, there's so much great music and arts and fashion and technology coming out. So highlighting like some really cool items coming from Asia is what I like to personally do. I have this music club where we share music. So I always play a lot of Japanese music. I skipped the Korean one because I think it's pretty well known. But I'll say to Indonesians, as like a music aficionado, I listen to a lot of top 40, top 50 music from around different countries in the world. And I think, subjectively, but in a way objectively, Indonesian pop music, rock music is among the best out there right now in terms of musical complexity, in terms of the songwriting. And so I have become a big fan of sharing Indonesian popular music to Americans and telling them there's really good stuff. It's not all these just, I think a lot of the beats and sound very derivative and very similar among pop music across the world. So Indonesia and I think Japan are really holding out, trying to make sure that good songwriting, good music is still out there. I love sharing.
Thank you. Let's turn to the live audience here at America in Jakarta. Does anyone have a question? If so, please raise your hand. Oh, wow. Okay. We'll get through them all. Don't worry.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Gina. I'm from Indonesia University of Education. My question is actually about how recently among youth, we often want to westernize ourselves, especially since America, I think all over the world, people look upon the culture, American culture. So how do we, if we want to go abroad, or if we just live here and we live around the pop culture, American pop culture, how do we not westernize ourselves and be proud of our own culture? Because I can imagine living in America, maybe the panelists themselves have the have the feeling to want to westernize themselves and to blend in with the 6, 7 foot blonde, blue-eyed American. So how do you stop yourself to not be too westernized and be more proud of your own culture? So maybe we, all among youth can be more proud of Indonesia as well. That's my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I guess, Gloria, I'll start with you because you mentioned earlier how growing up, there was a time period in your younger years where you didn't want to show the fact that you were eating Korean food or something like that. So do you have any advice to answer the questioner?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, like I mentioned, there was a lot of pressure to fit in and belong. And as more people, start moving into my area, and there are more people, more diversity, people with different backgrounds, it gave me a little bit more bravery, I think, to think about what I'm proud of. And I think the one thing that, for me, is to think about who I am, what's my identity. And a lot of that is, the culture that my parents passed to me, and thinking about what aspects of those things I'm proud of. And, as an Indonesian young person, there's so much that you can be proud of, right? And I think that you should think about what your identity is, what your culture is, what aspects are something that you're very, very proud of, and hold tight onto that. Because being someone else is not going to make you happy. Being a Western, stereotypical Western person is not going to make you happy. But there's real joy and pride in, who you are, and being able to share that with others.
Major Yamamoto, earlier you mentioned about how to instill pride. So I wonder if you have any advice in this case.
Going back to that, knowing who you are, being close with your parents, your family, and your friends, that will help build you up, right? That's your support network that's gonna get you to where you need to go. Take pride in that. Be individualistic. Speak out. It's fine. It's fine. Like, take that pride with you. So, yeah, that would be my advice. Yeah.
Individuality is so prized these days. I'll use an example that you can relate to as university students. I mean, in the United States, when you're a high school student and you're applying for colleges, you have to write what's called a statement, personal statement. The statement, if you write that, you want to look like everybody else, you're not going to stand out in the process, right? It's about what makes you you, what makes you unique. And I will say, along the philosophy of what Gloria and Major Yamamoto already mentioned, when you are being your authentic self and you bring that authentic self to everything that you do, you're going to be so much more successful because you're happy being in your own skin. So I would say definitely, be yourself and treasure your unique culture. But I'll turn it over to Jasmine and Josh to see if you guys have anything else to add.
Sure. I think I want to stem off of Thao-An's point. So if you're authentic, you then feel more confident. And then if you feel more confident, you actually might not see it as, oh, I don't want to, why do I have to be like them? Or why is there's this pressure? It's actually shifted. And then you think, well, I know who I am and I feel comfortable with this. And maybe there's ways that you can blend aspects that you like from other cultures, but maybe you don't want to, and that's okay too. So I think it's this concept of being authentic makes you confident, and then you can see the issues and things around you differently, and blend if you like, and not blend if you don't like.
Josh, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, your college application example is actually something that was on my mind too. It's, in fact, sometimes being a minority is an advantage because we are looking for someone who's unique and who's special. So just, embracing that. Like, for example, di Amerika tidak ada banyak orang Indonesia, ya. So if you have a chance to visit or study in the United States, do you want to, wear something from your country? Obviously not every day, maybe, but a few days. Wouldn't it be cool to wear something from your country, whether it is the certain style of headscarf or certain dress, a batik, or even your favorite band from Indonesia? They have a banner. People will ask you, whoa, tell me more about that. And then they will remember you. They may ask you more about you, and it makes it easier almost when you have something different that people can find interesting.
Thank you. And now, in the interest of fairness, I'm going to ask a question that was submitted online. What are some common challenges that AAA and HPI diplomats face in their careers, and how do they overcome these challenges? So, Josh, I'm going to start with you first this time.
I think I've touched on it, so I won't say too much, but I think if I have disagreements about certain policies in Asia, there are some, maybe for many years, including myself, I think I shouldn't voice it because I wouldn't seem as American or I wouldn't seem as loyal. But I feel like I was hired to give that different voice. You know, I contribute best to the State Department and the U.S. government if they can hear something that is not the same thing the group thinks, the same thing that other people are saying. And so what I've been trying to do is to be able to find ways to voice my beliefs or what I think that will strengthen the United States, but from a different policy standpoint.
Thank you. Jasmine, Gloria, do you have any examples or any advice?
Can't think of anything right now. I don't know if others want to go ahead and if I can come up with something else.
I mean, I can share from my experience. You know, very early in my career, I was a consular officer. So the person who would interview applicants for visas if they look to go to the U.S. And obviously, when somebody is refused or declined a visa, they're not happy, right? So the most common refrain that I would hear of applicants who didn't agree with the decision would be, I don't want to be refused a visa by somebody who's not American. Can you bring an American to the window and have them refuse me instead? I mean, you can ask me how did I feel, you know, every single time that I heard people saying that to me. Obviously not very good. But, you know, after a few times like that, the key takeaway for me was actually what happened afterward. So my engagement with every single person who said that for me, that was an opportunity for me to clarify, right? That, yes, I'm actually an American officer qualified to conduct the visa interview. And based on our law and regulations, you have not met those. So, you know, you're being refused a visa. So I think, you know, after an incident like that and after a conversation with me, I would bet you that the next time the person is refused a visa again by somebody who looks similar to myself or who looks completely different but may not be in their view American, that they would not have that conversation again. So I view those as opportunities to engage in productive conversations and to clarify, you know, that not all Americans look the same as the people that you may be seeing in pop culture. So that's one experience. I don't know if you all have any to share.
One thing I think that is definitely a challenge as an Asian American diplomat, I think, is sometimes being the only person who looks different in a room. And I think in situations like that, sometimes people forget other perspectives. And I have to really remind myself, I have a unique perspective, and it's important to our American values, and I should voice that. But you know, sometimes it's a little bit tiring, right? And so I think the challenge is to remind myself that my opinion, my thoughts, my experience is important, and I need to voice it, even when I get a little bit tired, to push myself to do it because it's important.
To that point, Gloria, I would say, you know, as bystanders, and this is not just related to AI and HPI members, but you know, if you're ever in a room and you see that someone should be given the opportunity to speak up and they don't, as the person who's not even affected, you should say something, and you know, maybe be an ally to that person and support and encourage that person to speak up. So, you know, generally speaking, I would say in cases like that, being an ally is as important as the person who's trying to find the courage to speak up. I will see our American Center, do you have another question to ask us, our virtual audience?
From AC Untan, we have a question. Yeah.
Yay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Rio. I'm currently studying in international relation major, second semester. And I have a question for you guys. As long as you guys have been a diplomat, representing USA and also your own culture, is there any tips for us Indonesian citizens to be confident, to be as confident as you guys on representing our culture and also our own country? Thank you.
Wow, that's a big question with a lot of responsibility. Jasmine, do you want to take this first?
Sure. Yeah, that's a big question. A very important question, though. Okay, I think one message that's important for everyone to think about is that identities are contextual. Identities are not static, which means that they change, they're dynamic. So maybe a few years ago you felt this way, but then, with your life experiences, then you actually feel like you have another identity. And it's layered on, right? And I think if you remember that for yourself, and then also try to remind others around you this idea, that can actually help bring more harmony and more understanding. So just the idea that identities are always changing and that they're layered, and it's never just one identity that this person has or that I have. So I think that's my one piece of advice.
Does any of the other panelists have any additional advice?
Going back to your question, I tell this statement to some of my colleagues from the Guard, so some of my troops. Get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Challenge yourself. That's how you get better. If you asked me 5 years ago if I'll be sitting here speaking to hundreds of people, no. I'm not a great speaker. I'm not really like that outgoing. So being up here is a challenge for myself. It's tough. We're nervous. I'm up here, kind of sweaty palms and all that good stuff. But so taking that step sometimes, getting comfortable with that uncomfortable, right? I'm not a great introducer to public speaking either, or like one-on-one speaking. I'm not a great person to meet new people. Like it takes me a little while. But I challenge myself because this job requires me to do it. And it's tough. But you got to do it, right? You got to put yourself out there. Just like, asking your question today. Do that. Take that step. Even though it's painful and you're nervous and everything, if you don't do it, you may regret it. That's why.
I couldn't tell that you were nervous, so you're doing a great job. I will also add to all the great things that Jasmine and Major Yamamoto already said. But I would say, at the end of the day, no one person should put pressure on themselves to represent the entire nation, right? So to going back to, your own individual unique self, I don't think you should feel the need to think that every time you speak up in, a venue that you're speaking on behalf of the Indonesian people. You are representing yourself. So I think, whatever you say or do, keep that in mind so that you don't put the pressure of an entire nation on your shoulders. Next, I think I will turn back to our live audience who, yes, in the middle, please. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Can I go over there first before I get yelled at?
Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm here to ask, especially for Bryce, Major Bryce. In the back to earlier session, you mentioned that you've come to Indonesia, right, with your all of your family, and it's you are here in for I'm sorry, 6 or 5 years.
Three.
Three.
Three to
Oh,
four.
three.
Yeah.
Okay, three. So, not not for Bryce. It's for all of the mentor. I want to ask: have you caught some culture shock when you be in? Yes. So, because it's I want to know how you be able to face the culture shock because. Especially each of you have your own culture, right? Especially Bryce, Major Bryce, I'm sorry. You have Hawaiian, Chinese, Japanese, and America. Yes, America. uh, that's the question: how you face that culture shock with all your uh, culture background because you know all of your in this room know right Indonesia is so hot. Indonesia like all of their people are so wise like that so so thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Great question. Actually, coming from Hawaii, it was fairly easy moving here. The cultures are very similar because we're all Asia based. Coming here with a family, it was it went way smoother than we ever thought. For me, my culture shock was when I left Hawaii and I went to the mainland. I went to University of Washington. I went to the continental U.S. for college. To me, that was a culture shock because now you become the minority. You change yourself, right? And that was a challenge. And so coming here wasn't too bad. We love Jakarta. Traffic, no, not so much, right? But yeah. But coming here, it was actually fairly smooth. Like, it worked out really well.
So his answer just prompted me to realize what my cultural shock was for Indonesia. I mean, I had served in China before, so, traffic was equal, and actually Panama, where traffic in both of those places were equally bad. But I have to tell you, crossing the street on my own continues to be a challenge for me, and that is the biggest cultural shock. But I am very thankful because, everywhere there's always somebody with a sign to help us cross the street.
I will say that being an American diplomat requires that my family and I move all over the world often. So I've lived in, Asia, in Europe, in the Middle East, and I will say that culture shock is guaranteed. It is just part of the experience, and you just have to embrace it. And one thing that I guess kind of remind myself is that every place I go, the people, the culture, they have something unique that I am probably going to love. So that's the mentality I try to have because it's part of their lifestyle, and there's such richness that you can, learn about and get to know everywhere you go.
Jasmine?
One of the things that surprised me when I moved to Indonesia, so now it's been 6 months, is how polite Indonesians are. Yeah, it's amazing. You have to selamat pagi, selamat siang, oh, sorry, it's still siang, not sore. And then I get corrected, and then I'm like, oh no. So it's amazing how polite your culture is. And I think that's something that surprised me because I think prior to moving here, when I thought of Indonesia, I thought of batik and other things. I had no idea how polite and friendly all of you are. And so I think it's made me more polite because I'm always checking to make sure I'm saying it's either siang or sore, because otherwise I'm going to be corrected.
Josh?
Speaking of shock, I was shocked whenever I try to take my kids to the movies here, how Indonesians love horror movies. And it's great. I mean, I've started to watch a few, but the affinity, how much Indonesians like scary movies, that's been interesting.
Thank you. Okay, going back to this side of the audience. Any questions? Okay, in the back, please.
All right, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Axel, and I'm currently a pre-service teacher studying in University of Education in Bandung. So I'm really curious about the cultural diversity within the Asian American communities, so particularly in educational settings. So because my undergraduate thesis focused on culturally responsive teaching, which highlight the importance of the understanding students' background. So perhaps can you share your experience, like how educational institutions in the U.S. Promote awareness and appreciation of Asian American in cultural diversity? And moreover, do you have any suggestion, like how can we as a pre-service teacher enhance similar efforts in Indonesia, considering our own diverse cultural landscape? Thank you.
Thank you. So actually, in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is take as many questions as we can, and then before I have our panelists answer so that we can address as many questions as possible. So did you have a question? Please.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tere from the same university as that boy before, and I'd love to know that from Jasmine, I heard that you have experienced that you face a kind of difficulty in language because there are a lot of language in Indonesia and also different suku in Indonesia. Just like us, we are Batak. For example, I'm Bataknis, but I live in other not my origin island of Bataknis suku, and I want to know that how do you see your first language? Because I believe that you have your parents, that you said before, your parents teach you your culture, teach you about the language, and how do you see your language? And does your first language give you special voices, or I mean like when you talk to the community or to talk to the elders, does it bring any special voices when you talk in your first language, or you should speak in the second language like English? That's what I want to ask.
So let me collect a few questions and then we all take turns. Yes, in the back, please.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I will introduce myself. My name is Arik Nafil Toris, and I'm from the University of Esa Unggul, Harapan, Bekasi. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. Guys. Okay. It was just a simple question about all of you guys. The first one is, to be honest, I have two questions for you.
Can you make it one, please, in the interest of time? Sorry.
Okay. What was the most challenging experience when you live in Indonesia? Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And then one more question that was received online. How do AANHPI diplomats bring their cultural backgrounds into their diplomatic work, and how does this impact international relations? So I know those were very, big questions we have to answer. For the first question about education, Josh, would you mind answering? And then Jasmine, I'll turn
Sure.
over to you for the second specific question. And then the rest of us can tackle the other two. Thank you.
Sure. The first question on education, I was thinking about that, and I think more than just like, hey, this is some culture's day and you bring a costume or show some food from the area. I think reading books and learning histories from other cultures or different sukus would be, I think, the best way. I remember learning about, Africa or places in Russia by reading their books by their authors who are the authentic voices, not the reinterpretations from an American standpoint. I thought that was, it was life-changing for me to understand that other people have these complicated histories or their own stories and challenges. And so introducing more books from authentic voices from other cultures and learning history from other places, because they have different histories that shape their people.
Thank you.
Could I add, sorry, just because I was a former teacher, I just want to add that multicultural literature is something that I, studied and incorporated in my classroom. One thing I would say, along with books like Josh said, is that using examples, using different aspects of history in all the lessons that you plan for your students. It doesn't have to be one day where you wear costumes from wherever, but you're doing a math problem. The examples you use can pull in different cultures. The books that you choose, you can pull in different cultures. Indonesia especially has so many different ethnicities and history and people groups. You can easily incorporate that into all the different subjects for your students.
Jasmine, if you could make it quick. Sorry.
Sure. So your question on language, I think some of our panelists here sort of alluded to the fact that maybe when they were young, they were discouraged to kind of show that they can speak, or maybe they didn't want to because they wanted to be more American. I think language is power. So if you're able to speak your original mother tongue and other languages, that's wonderful, right? And I think when you have, when you speak a different language, you're still who you are, yourself, but somehow the persona might change a little bit, right? And that actually allows you to maybe connect with people in a different way than you otherwise wouldn't be able to. So I would say embrace languages as much as you can, if possible.
Thank you. And then Major Yamamoto, can you tackle the challenges question?
For my family and myself, the challenge actually goes back to language. Not being able to go to Bahasa school or our language school really, I feel handicapped us as a family. We're taking lessons, right now and trying to learn it. But that language piece, I found it as it's very challenging for us as diplomats, right? Moving overseas, we really got to carve out that time to take that initiative to learn the language and start learning the culture that way. Thank you.
Your biggest challenges in Indonesia?
Biggest challenge? Traffic, I guess. Traffic, making sure, right? You gotta judge your time and make sure you make it to your meetings. But those are one of the larger challenges.
And then just very briefly, just to tackle the last question that was asked online, how we, bring our background to help with our work. I think we just offer the different perspectives. In every conversation, when you have more diverse points of view, whatever the solutions that you come about or policy, it's that much stronger because of the diversity of the views. So I would say that's one of the advantages of having our background and contributing to the conversation. But we are going over time, so I would like to thank all of you for joining us today, either in person or virtually, and turn it over to the MC, Ara. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have another round of applause for our speakers, please? Yes. Thank you so much to our speakers today, Jasmine, Gloria, Bryce, Joshua, and also Thao for sharing your stories as Asian American diplomats. And also thank you so much everyone here for joining our event today. We do hope that everyone gained a lot of insights and also knowledge from today's event. And earlier in this event, we had a social media quiz for our online viewers. And the question was, when was the Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month established? And the correct answer to that is C, June 1977. Congratulations to @NurAlia85 from Instagram for answering the question correctly. And also thank you to everyone else who has participated on our social media quiz. And lastly, for more updates and also information about @America, don't forget to visit and sign up as a member on our website at www.acamerica.or.id, and also follow us on our social media platforms at @America on Instagram, X, and also Facebook. Once again, thank you so much everyone for joining our event today. My name is Ara, and see you soon at the next @America event.